Hello, this is Dr. Barney, and during this session I'm going to be providing you with information about how to build a reference list in APA format. Anytime a student is trying to write an academic paper, they need to make sure that they accurately represent where that information came from. The first step in accurately representing this information is making sure that you include a list of references from where this information came. Now, there are a number of different resources that are available to the student that should be included in this reference list. The first category of resource are what's known as journal articles. Journal articles come from periodicals. They come from academic journals. They come from peer-reviewed journals. And the reason why we call them this is because these articles have been reviewed by a group of scholars who have determined the accuracy and the rigor, the ethics of this study before they allow it to be published. Now, anytime you quote or cite a journal article as part of your academic paper, you need to make sure that you include the name of the author who wrote the journal article. You need to include the date of publication. You need to include the title of the article, as well as the title of the periodical or the title of the journal itself. You also need to make sure that you include the volume number of the journal, as well as the page numbers on which the actual article has been included. Now, below I've provided you with an example of what this might look like based upon a real and an actual journal article. What you're going to notice is that I've included the last names of each of these authors, as well as the first initial from their first names. I also include the year that this actual article was written and the title of the article itself. In italics, I include the name of the journal that the article came from, including the volume number and the page numbers that the journal article can be found on. Now, the second category of resource that should be represented in the reference list include books. The format for books is very similar to what we find for journal articles. However, what you'll notice is that the title of the work itself comes in italics, and we also provide the location in which this information had been published. So once again, we see an example taken from a social policy textbook that's often used in social work courses. And you'll see that the only words that have been included in uppercase are the first words in each sentence, both before as well as after the colon. Everything else is lowercase. We've also included information about the edition, and this is particularly important whenever you are including books in your reference list. Not all books are going to have second, third, and fourth editions, but for the ones that do, you want to make sure that you are including this information as part of your reference list. In terms of the location, you want to make sure that you include the city and an abbreviated representation of the state in which the publication was actually made. The next category of resource that should be represented in a reference list includes government documents, and this is particularly important for those students who are taking classes in social welfare policy. Again, we see a lot of the same information, but what's most unique here with this particular form of reference is the publication number that needs to be included. You're going to find these publication numbers are often included in government documents themselves, so you don't have to look far in order to find them. And if the government document itself doesn't include a publication number, then you don't need to include it in your reference list. The example that I've provided you with below gives us a great overview of what this might look like. It's DHHS publication number ADM 90-1679. Another thing that you're going to notice about this particular example is that the author is not actually a person, but in this case it represents a government organization, and it's the National Institute of Mental Health. Now, this does not just apply to government documents. This could also apply to journal articles, perhaps internet sources, and so on. Sometimes it's not a person who wrote a particular document, but instead an organization of people who authored and wrote that document. When this is the case, whether it's a book or a journal article or a government document, you need to make sure that you are providing the name of the organization instead of the names of individuals. The fourth category of resource that could be included in your reference list are internet sources. And these are becoming increasingly popular among students. You need to make sure, however, that when you select internet sources, that you are selecting reputable internet sources. And by reputable, I mean government sources, government internet sources. These could be newspaper sources, media sources, but you want to make sure that you're avoiding things like blogs, Wikipedia, and these types of things that are not reputable and that are unsubstantiated in their writings. I've given you an example of an internet source and what it would look like if we were to reference this and include this reference in our APA formatted reference list. And what we see here is the name of the author, and once again, this is an organization, not an individual. It's the National Association of Social Workers. We have the year of publication, then we have the title of the web page, which is the Code of Ethics of the National Association of Social Workers. We also include retrieved from, and we have the name of the web page that this information actually comes from. Now, this is just a very brief overview of some of the different resources and how they could be referenced as part of your reference list. But you may come across a number of different sources that do not fit into some of these standards that I have provided you with. So where do you go for more information? What happens if you are trying to provide information from something like an interview that you've done with an individual? For this, you would want to make sure that you turn to the APA manual itself. Make sure that you're using the most up-to-date version, and currently that's the 6th edition, which was published in 2012. And this manual provides you with a lot of overview about some of the different references that we have not covered during today's session. Another great resource is the OWL at Purdue's Online Writing Lab APA Guide, and I've provided you with a web page that you can go to, and this includes a lot of great information about references and how to format them in a variety of different ways beyond the basics which we have covered during today's session.